Extract 1. You hear part of an interview with the editor of a book about pop music. Now look at questions 1 and 2.
For serious pop music fans, my next guest, Dave Roberts, is something of a hero. Dave's the editor of the Guinness Book of British Hit Singles, a book that catalogues the singers, bands and songs that made it into the charts over the decades. Dave, it must be a huge undertaking.
The public perception seems to be of an aircraft hangar full of researchers beavering away compiling the book, but that's quite a long way from the truth. It's actually a small editorial team which has a body of experts that can be called on when needed. At the drop of a hat, they can tell you all sorts of detailed information. It's all in their heads.
And do you get many complaints?
Tons of emails, actually. Usually in the few weeks after a new edition's come out. And for the most part, they're of the catalogue number for Roy Orbison's Pretty Woman has 2 numbers transposed in it type. Unfortunately, they aren't usually major errors on our part, just typos, and we take the emails as a compliment because they show how much people care about the book.
So, next to our photo competition. Don't forget this month's brief is fashion, which means anything from icons of street style to wannabe catwalk models. Send us your photos now of you and your friends on the theme of fashion for the chance to win a camera and have your shot showcased on our website along with the judges' comments. And you can see last week's winning shot on that very theme there now. It was taken by Gavin Warren of Glasgow, who talked us through it.
The shot was taken outside the old Stirling Library. It's a major hangout for punks and skateboarders. You see a kid with his board standing next to this goth girl sucking a lollipop. I just happened to be passing with my camera and thought it'd be a great place for a shot. The goths and punks all turn up in their gear and pretend to be tough and annoy everybody. In fact, the library started to play classical music to try and discourage them, but they keep coming. I just got this single shot before these two realised what I was up to, and it just appealed to me.
And Gavin wins a fully automatic zoom lens.
So, playing games is big in your family then?
Yes, my children have an evening playing board or card games at least once a week, more often if they wish, and the choice of actual activity is left up to them. But then again, because people need to interact, we've agreed to ration the amount of free time which gets spent looking at television or computer screens.
Right.
And then we have regular music and poetry evenings, as well as games sessions, and nobody in the family gets away without taking centre stage.
Oh.
We let visitors do karaoke or tell jokes if they're not too keen on performing, and although some of our relations say they find the thought of doing that excruciating, afterwards they're always thrilled to have taken part.
And they still come to visit you?
Most of them.
Cranes are huge, spectacular birds, tall and elegant on the ground, with a large, impressive wingspan in the sky. By their very presence, cranes demand attention. Perhaps that's why they have featured heavily in Asian art, literature and legend for thousands of years, and why they are seen as a symbol of peace and happiness in India. In Africa, they are an emblem of the Zulu royal family, and the crane is South Africa's national bird. There are a total of 15 species of crane worldwide, 7 of which are under threat, and 3 of these are found in southern Africa. It is these 3 species that I want to update you on this evening. In terms of total populations, the wattled crane is down to about 280 individuals, the blue crane about 21,000, and the crowned crane about 3,500. So none of them has what we might call healthy numbers. So what are the main reasons for the decline in crane numbers in southern Africa? Habitat destruction comes top of the list. Cranes are generally found in wetlands, and these areas are very much under siege in southern Africa, where water is a very scarce resource. Another major problem for cranes is poisoning by agricultural pesticides. These birds will eat anything from small mammals and reptiles to fallen grain, so are vulnerable in areas that have been sprayed, for example. The growing use of electricity is evidence of development in southern Africa, and cranes are the frequent victims of collisions with the power lines that now crisscross the landscape. Small wonder, then, the cranes have been in decline. But things are changing. In South Africa, crane conservation has become one of the major thrusts in endangered species conservation. With the Endangered Wildlife Trust, one of Southern Africa's most effective environmental conservation organisations, acting as an umbrella body for a number of hands-on conservation units. For the wattled crane, a unique population-boosting programme has been introduced, called Isolation, Rear and Release. Chicks are either bred in captivity, or one of the 2 eggs normally laid in a wild clutch is removed. After artificial incubation, the chicks are reared by crane mums. These are local women who dress up as cranes and are trained to behave like cranes. When fully reared, the chicks are released into the wild in pre-selected safe areas. Modern technology is also being used with the blue crane. Some adult birds are now being fitted with miniature transmitters and through satellite tracking. The Earth Station is in France, and South Africa's network of airports is also involved. They are being followed around the country to determine their movements. So, from a situation at the beginning of this decade, when Southern Africa's cranes looked as though they might not even make it into the next century, it now seems that the cranes will be flying into the future with confidence.
Today in the studio, as part of our series of interviews with famous duos, we have 2 people who've worked together for more than 15 years. Tony Morland is the boss, and Anita Meadows is his personal assistant. Nothing unusual in that, you might think. But what makes this duo a little different is the fact that the business which they both help run is in fact a travelling circus. Welcome to you both.
Hello.
Hi.
Now, Tony, first, you own the circus. So do you come from one of those traditional circus families? Was it in the blood?
Oh, hardly. I had an unremarkable childhood up to the age of 15. But I'd seen my first circus at the age of about 8. And from that moment on, I'd set my heart on being part of that world one day. I didn't exactly run away to join the circus, but it was very much against my parents' wishes when I went, because they really thought I should be getting some qualifications. No, I don't think they saw much of a future in it.
But what qualified you then for the circus ring? Did you have an act?
No, it wasn't like that, really. The curious thing is that I'd never longed to be a performer. I didn't fancy leaping about on the back of a horse or juggling. No, right from the start, the thing that was uppermost in my mind was the idea of stepping out into that ring wearing the big hat and welcoming people to my circus. So, at first, as far as I was concerned, it was just a matter of getting practical experience of how the circus worked. I was happy doing any job that was going, actually.
And before long you did set up on your own, didn't you? How did you manage that?
Well, I suppose I was about 22, and my dad, who'd come round to the idea in the meantime, helped me by lending me some capital, which I added to my own savings to invest in my first tent. And from then on, I was the boss. I only had a few acts, but later I teamed up with a friend, and the circus has been a partnership ever since. I'd been in business for about 5 years when I realised I really needed more administrative support. And that's where Anita came in.
And what made you join the circus, Anita?
Well, unlike Tony, I never harboured any dreams of going off with a circus. In fact, the idea had never crossed my mind. But when Tony's tent arrived in Manchester, where I was living, I'd just been going through various family difficulties, and I was ready for a change of scene. The idea of just travelling around as the booking office clerk, which is the post that I saw advertised, appealed to me,
I thought it would offer a means of escape for a while.
Yeah. She stepped into the role of personal assistant about 5 years later. Well, she was a qualified secretary, so it was a natural progression.
I can't ever remember being asked to become your PA, actually. It just sort of happened.
That's right.
But having been with the circus for a while, I'd picked up a lot about what was involved in the running of the show, and I gradually just took more on, you know. I just did what needed doing. And I've since been on both word processing and accountancy courses to help me cope with it all.
And now I don't know what I'd do without her. I love the circus, but the paperwork would drive me crazy. And it's getting worse.
Oh, you can say that again. And it also includes a fair amount of diplomacy, which, let's say, isn't really Tony's style.
Yeah, and she also arranges things like work permits for foreign artists. Oh, that can be a real hassle. Yeah. I'll have a little laugh sometimes, though. My handwriting always comes in for a lot of stick, and Anita's the only one who can decipher it. And she's very willing to work long into the night, if necessary. So, as long as everything gets done, I don't mind if she takes the odd afternoon off to do her own things. I mean, there's no clock watching or standing on ceremony here.
I guess that's where we really see eye to eye, and that laid-back approach. Without that, it wouldn't work, and I'd have moved on years ago.
Yeah. Anita, Tony, thanks very much for joining me this morning.
Oh, thanks.
Speaker 1.
I have an old-fashioned belief in lifelong self-improvement. I also have that need for tutorial guidance, which is so typical of musicians. So, the idea of a holiday where you lock yourself up in the country with a group of like-minded people to learn a new skill, well, it really appealed to me. There were about, a dozen of us. All ages and backgrounds seemed to be represented, which was brilliant, and we sat learning our lines all day. Then, after dinner, what we prepared would be performed and discussed. It was hilarious, and afterwards we all kept in touch and swapped photos. So I've got lots of memories to look back on.
Speaker 2.
It's amazing how quickly people tune into a situation and organise themselves. Although we'd all opted for a self-catering package, the group soon set up a rota for providing the evening meal, which left us free most days to concentrate on the task in hand. I'm not sure that what we learned couldn't have been gleaned from one of those paperbacks entitled How to Pen a Bestseller, but we had a lot more fun doing it. The group psychology was fascinating to watch as it unfolded. As characters began to emerge, it became clear that the least prepossessing members of the group were going to turn out to be the most gifted.
Speaker 3.
One unexpected aspect of the course was that we all became experts on the physical characteristics of lop-eared goats. So often did they feature in our representations of the various landscapes. There were also many outings, including a lovely meal in a local farmhouse. It was all very well organised. But it was the clear air and the sparkling perspectives that really encouraged me to try something new at home. Some people were rather shy, but that suited me, and everyone tended to get on with their own work. The tutor would give a demonstration in the morning, and then wander around from easel to easel giving advice about brushwork, etc. She was scrupulously fair with her time.
Speaker 4.
As a single person, I'd had 1 or 2 lonely holidays abroad on my own, so I loved the friendly meals with everyone eating together. Most evenings ended in a sing-song. It was lovely. You can do all sorts of other activities, like throwing pots or trying your hand at wildlife photography. But as I hadn't so much as looked at a book since my school days, I was keen to get back some of my old fluency. Oh, the tutors are great. They realise you're on holiday, and so no one's going to rap your knuckles if you don't turn up for a class. Anyway, I could make just as much progress chatting to the locals, and they certainly had plenty of time for me.
Speaker 5.
I was quite nervous at first, although there was no need to be. The group included a lot of people who, like me, were just looking for inspiration. One couple had won the holiday in a competition, some had been before, but they didn't seem to be much the wiser for it. My only criticism is that it could have been more hands-on. We spent a lot of time watching demonstrations when we could have been chopping or peeling ourselves. Because we had the afternoons free, we didn't get on top of one another, and as our efforts literally provided a topic of conversation at meal times, it was all very relaxed, and it was difficult not to get on with each other.